Linda's 50th birthday dawned gray as Toronto's slush-stained sidewalks. She shuffled past a community center, clutching a half-dead fern, her empty nest's latest casualty, when a stranger in a sequined hockey jersey thrust a leather notebook into her hands. "Write till it burns," he winked, vanishing into a subway crowd. That night, Linda cracked it open, lit only by her phone's glow, and found herself typing into a virtual journaling circle called Scribble Rebellion. Between tales of menopause misadventures and a woman in Linda's 50th birthday dawned gray as Toronto's slush-stained sidewalks, but that leather notebook, worn smooth by years of grocery lists and half-finished poems, felt like an old friend nudging her awake. She'd bought it on a whim decades ago, back when her hands were too busy rocking strollers to hold pens. Now, with both kids gone, one to med school, other to a Berlin art collective, her apartment echoed like a dropped mug waiting to shatter. She hesitated before opening it. What if her words just evaporated? Like steam from her morning chai, they're 1 second, forgotten next. But then an email popped up, Virtual Journaling Circle, starts today. Some lit community center initiative, all Zoom squares and strangers' living rooms. Linda clicked join before courage fled, fingers fumbling keyboard like she was texting in mittens. Turns out, grief wasn't a boulder, it was lint. Tiny, clingy, collecting in pockets until you shook yourself out. Each morning, she scribbled memories, her son's disastrous first pancakes, her daughter's laugh like wind chimes in a storm. Some entries were messy, ink blots betraying shaky hands. Others glowed, lit by that stubborn spark she'd forgotten lived in her. By week 3, she caught herself humming while chopping onions, noticing how winter light gilded her windowsill. Notebook, once a relic, now held proof, she wasn't just someone's mom. She was Linda, woman who burned toast, adored jazz vinyls, and finally remembered how to take up space. Linda's 50th birthday dawned gray as Toronto's slush-stained sidewalks, but by noon, she'd tripped into salvation, quite literally. While browsing self-help shelves at a community center, her boot caught on a rug fringe, sending her sprawling toward a flyer for Write Your Next Chapter, a virtual journaling circle. A leather-bound notebook tumbled from her tote, its pages blank as her post-empty nest calendar. Fate, it seemed, had a flair for slapstick. That evening, fingers trembling over Zoom's join button, she met her accidental crew, a retired teacher in Nova Scotia who journaled in haiku, a widowed baker from Chicago doodling pie charts of grief, and Marjorie, 70, spry, and sporting neon pink glasses, who called herself a story midwife. "Honey, your life ain't over," Marjorie drawled when she confessed she'd only written grocery lists since her kids left. "It's just unspooling messy first drafts." Linda's early entries were stiff as starched linen, made oatmeal. Remembered Emily's laugh. But Marjorie assigned playful prompts, describe your kitchen sponge's secret life. What would your 80-year-old self tell you right now? Slowly, ink loosened what years had clenched. She chronicled her mother's curry recipe, her teenage rebellion involving a stolen motorcycle, a fact her children would have found lit, and quiet thrill of rediscovering Arthur's films alone. Leather notebook became more than pages, it was a compass. One entry, why not audition for that community theater ad? Led to her playing a zany aunt in Arsenic and Old Lace. Another scribble, learn guitar riff from Heart of Gold, had her fumbling chords in a senior's music workshop, laughing her own clumsiness. By winter's end, Linda hosted her own journaling meetup, a cozy bookstore, serving terrible peppermint tea and wisdom earned through smudged ink. Marjorie beamed from her Brady Bunch Zoom square. Grief hadn't vanished, but it had company, stories, laughter, and quiet magic of a notebook that held not just memories, but invitations. Toronto's spring arrived, slush giving way to cherry blossoms. Linda's leather journal, now creased and coffee-stained, rested on her windowsill beside a pot of basil. She flipped to a fresh page, pen hovering. Somewhere down street, a kid's skateboard clattered. 51, she realized, might just be her most dazzling draft yet. Linda's 50th birthday dawned gray as Toronto's slush-stained sidewalks, but that leather notebook, gifted by her sister with a smirk about midlife cliches, became her rebellion. She filled its first page with a grocery list, then scratched it out. Real profound. But next morning, she woke before sunrise, brewed coffee strong enough to punch doubt in throat, and wrote 3 raw lines about how silence in her empty house didn't just echo, it hummed, a fridge left open. Community center flyers had snagged her eye for months, bingo. Knitting. Existential dread, but but it was a virtual journaling circle that lit a spark. Screen names like Maple Scribe and Poutine Poet made her snort, yet their shared stories of reinvention, a widow baking her way through grief, a retired teacher trekking Peru, stuck. Linda's own entries started tentative, then veered into dark humor. Day 23, realized my plants outnumber friends. They also judge less. Progress wasn't linear. One evening, she deleted an entire week's entries after rereading them aloud. Whiny, she muttered, tossing her phone onto couch. But that notebook. It stayed open. Ink didn't backspace. She pressed her palm against its cover, leather warm from her grip, and kept going. By spring, Linda's journal had become a map of small rebellions, a solo movie night, no apologizing for crying cartoons, signing up for pottery classes, might as well fail something new. Virtual Circle members cheered her on with heart emojis and one-liners about 50 being new 30, if 30 included naps. Then came morning she caught herself humming while scrubbing coffee stains from her favorite mug. Not a hymn to distraction, but an old song she'd forgotten she loved. Sunlight hit notebook's edge, gilding its battered corners. Linda grinned. Maybe healing wasn't about filling silence, but hearing what grew inside it. Linda's 50th birthday dawned gray as Toronto's slush-stained sidewalks, but that leather notebook, gifted by her daughter before she left for college, became her lifeline. First, scribbling felt silly, like whispering secrets to a brick wall. But pages filled with half-formed thoughts, grocery lists, and sudden bursts of clarity began stitching her back together. One rainy Tuesday, she stumbled upon a virtual journaling circle hosted by a local community center. Skeptical but desperate, she logged on, expecting woo-woo nonsense. Instead, she found women of all ages, some with silver streaks bolder than hers, sharing raw, messy truths. No filters, no pity parties. Just ink and courage. Months later, guts churning, Linda submitted an entry to a citywide Stories of Renewal exhibit. Not some polished essay, but a page torn straight from her notebook, smudged, coffee-stained, real. Opening night, she hovered near her display, pulse racing as strangers paused. Then it happened, a teen in ripped jeans snapped a pic, captioning it "This lady gets it." Overnight, her messy words went lit. A woman who'd once scoffed navel-gazing stood frozen before Linda's entry. Tears welled. "You wrote my life," she muttered. Crowd erupted, not in polite applause but whoops and stomps. Linda clutched that leather notebook, grinning. 50. Pfft. She'd just cracked open a new chapter. Later, flipping through pages, she marveled how grief had curled into gratitude, how solitude birthed connection. That notebook wasn't just paper and thread, it was a compass, leading her home. Linda's 50th birthday dawned gray as Toronto's slush-stained sidewalks, but that leather notebook, gifted by her sister with a wink, became her compass. First, scribbling felt like whispering into a void, just her and a pen against an apartment too quiet without teenage chaos. Then she stumbled upon a virtual journaling circle, a ragtag group of women from Tulsa to Tokyo, all untangling life's next act with ink and audacity. Week after week, Linda showed up, her odd habit of doodling rogue maple leaves in margins becoming a signature quirk. She wrote about grief that surprised her, missing mismatched socks left on stairs, phantom sound of a slammed door. But she also chronicled rediscovery, salsa classes, a community center where she stepped on toes, hers and others, thrill of mentoring young artists who called her Miss L with reverence. Her notebook grew dog-eared, its spine cracked from use, just like her courage. One entry, "Today I didn't just survive, I lit up like a CN Tower sunset," went viral in their online circle, sparking a chain reaction of women sharing their own raw, radiant truths. Linda began guiding monthly journal jams, blending prompts with playlist swaps, Aretha Franklin mandatory. What started as solace became a movement, proving empty nests could hold space for new wings. Now, her kitchen wall boasts a gallery of grandkid scribbles and postcards from journaling pals. Linda's mantra: midlife isn't a pause, it's freestyle remix. Grab your pen, your story's next chapter is begging to be written.